Hello and welcome to Changing Behaviours from the CI Group. I'm Rachel Downey and I'll be hosting this latest event as we explore data and analytics in driving high-performance teams, cultures and fact-based decision-making. Joining us on our panel of industry leaders today, we have David Watt. David has been leading CI for over 23 years and has transformed the agency to connect brands with their customers with his vision and drive for innovation. Also joining us in the studio today will be Della Wolf. Della co-founded the Curve Group in 2004 and has seen the business grow to become the UK's largest privately owned HR and recruitment outsource and consultancy provider. Della leads the delivery of transformational people projects. Now, joining us via a remote link is Meredith Amder. Meredith is CEO of Rhetoric, a data specialist with a background of senior leadership and strategy roles at Microsoft, Deloitte and DirecTV. Our assembled panel will be picking up on some of the key insights from our keynote speaker today, Graeme Hackland. Graeme has over 23 years experience in Formula One and is currently the Williams Group Chief Innovation Officer. I put my teeth back in. Graeme serves on the company's executive committee and leads the IT risk committee. Graeme's interview, conducted a few days ago ahead of this weekend's 70th anniversary Grand Prix, is undertaken by Robert Mole. Now, Robert heads up Pearl Analytics, the business intelligence division of the CI Group. Robert has over 25 years of experience working for Fortune 500 companies such as Oracle, SAP, CompuWare and Symantec. 4 rounds into the new Formula One season and, well, so far we're seeing Mercedes ahead yet again, Ferrari struggling for form and Williams leading the way in terms of progress from last season. David, what is your take on this crazy, bizarre season so far?
Well, Rachel, thank you for that introduction. If I actually look back to when Corporate Innovations was first formed, and in the mid-90s, it was taking over 10,000 people to the British Grand Prix. So, which is quite a big, which is over 10% of the actual live audience. But we've seen live audiences obviously go away now, and we're hoping to get them back really, really soon. So back then, we had to pivot our business, and we then went into very complex trade exhibitions, overseas conferences for thousands of people, lots of kind of trade incentives. So again, we find ourselves in a similar position today where we've got to pivot again. Because obviously there are no big conferences, trade exhibitions, overseas travel, that's all gone. So that's why it's ironic that we're sat in a virtual studio today with a virtual audience, and you know, it's how things have changed. It's absolutely fascinating. So, but I'm looking forward to Silverstone. But Della, I think you've got some connections with Silverstone, haven't you?
I have got a little bit of history, yeah, absolutely. So I joined the team at Silverstone in the end of the 90s to run all the catering, and actually moved to the area, and have stayed. I loved the area around Silverstone. And at that point, we were the largest ever Sunday lunch. So we did 30,000 people we served.
Now, let's go over to Meredith. Meredith, are you there?
Good morning.
Hello. Now, Formula One in the United States, motorsport out there. Tell us about it. I know you're a massive fan anyway.
I'm a big sporting fan, and the country at the moment rather sports starved. Certainly live sports, but in a country that's driven so much by TV viewing, it creates an interesting opportunity. Now, certainly automobile advertisers, you know, the heart of what makes so many of these businesses here tick, spend $2 billion alone just on live sports advertising.
Let's have a little listen now. Thank you, Meredith, by the way. We'll be back in just a moment to chat to you, but we're going to have a quick look at the chat between Graeme and Rob. So let's have a quick listen. We'll be back after this.
Well, welcome, Graeme. Great to have you with us. We've known each other for a really long time, but for the benefit of our audience, could you just introduce yourself and your role at Williams Formula One?
Hi, Robert. Hi, everyone. I'm Graeme Hackland. I'm the Chief Information Officer at Williams. I joined the team in January 2014 to help with the digital transformation. Well, I've spent 23 years in Formula One, so I've been in the industry a long time.
So let's dig into this subject that we were talking about today, Graeme. So, you know, how does data driving performance in Formula One?
Formula One has always seen the value in data. I think in the 50s and the 60s, and for most of the 70s, it was feedback from humans. But in 1979, Williams put the first data logger in a Formula One car. Formula One has always really valued data, and because it's performance and sport, I think if you look at sport in general, data is a way of improving your performance compared to your competitors. But one of the things I loved about Williams, and one of the reasons I joined Williams, is because of the work that they do beyond Formula One. So they've taken their Formula One derived technology and applied it to a wide range of, I'd say, the world's most complex challenges without over-egging it, I don't think.
Can you tell us a little bit about how the pandemic has really impacted your world?
The UK government put out a ventilator challenge saying, we don't have enough ventilators. And so our team worked with 5 different ventilator companies. And in the end, we worked most with a company called Penlon, who are based not far from us. And that was really impressive. And they've shipped actually over 11,000 ventilators to the NHS during this pandemic.
It really shows some tremendous agility in your team, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's been great. But and now we're going racing again. It's, we've had to adapt now to, we're having to test our staff every 3 days who are going racing. They're having to exist in a Formula One bubble to keep themselves safe and everyone else at the track safe. It's been quite an intense time. And so now we've probably switched a bit from, capturing data about cars to human data.
And does data analysis play a role in preparing you for those unusual circumstances?
We've been trying to, produce as fast a car as possible during a pandemic, during an F1 shutdown, during a lockdown, and the teams have all come together and worked with the FIA and with the Formula One group to bring more, sensible regulation in place to protect the smaller teams and to ensure that everyone is still going to be able to go racing, that the costs aren't going, out of control at this time, especially when there's no income coming in.
How big is the task to analyze and interpret all that data from a single race? And is it the entire team that's involved, or is it a specific group of people that do the analysis for you?
Right, we divide the data down per role. We'll have multiple individuals, so multiple aerodynamicists looking at the data, multiple people looking at tire data. We break that data down so that it's more digestible, and they're all feeding that data to the race engineer. So the only person who talks to the driver is the race engineer.
But are there any lessons from that process that can be applied to other industries? I mean, you mentioned a couple of brilliant examples there, but is it a direct relationship from what you develop in the race in terms of data and analysis, or is there a longevity around the information that then creates new opportunity in other industries?
We drive decision making down the organization. You can't wait for the CEO to make a decision and then feed that back down, right? The race engineer, the tire engineer, they have to be able to make decisions on the ground in real time and know that they're not going to get fired if they make the wrong decision afterwards, right? So that when we talk about it, and no fear culture, that has to be a real thing in Formula One. I'm also really proud of the work we did with the University Hospital of Wales, who took the learnings from pit stops in Formula One, how everyone operates, the whole orchestration of a pit stop. And they applied that into the operating theatre for babies in their hospital. And they have told us that has helped to save babies' lives. And I think that's amazing. That
now that your team is reduced in size and possibly still working remotely, what is that you measure them on today, and how do you manage that team effectively?
So when you talk about human performance, this can sometimes be a tricky area to talk about, right? Humans don't
Yes.
like to be monitored. They don't like to be appraised of their performance. They like to be praised if they're doing well. But so it can be tricky. But in Formula One, there is a culture of that constant analysis of everything. So what went right in this session? Learn from that. What went wrong? Don't do that again. What's interesting is, how do you keep a high-performing team performing at their optimum year after year after year? Staying at that optimum level for 4, 5, 6 years is extremely difficult. Most teams, most businesses don't achieve that. We focus on, does this make the car go faster? I don't spend money on IT projects that don't contribute to car performance. There's a few exceptions, right? So I always say to other organizations, what's your equivalent of, does this make the car quicker? And focus on those things.
We're all adapting during these crazy times, aren't we? We're all evolving during these crazy times. It's great just listening to how that all happens, and the human data as well. And again, everything we will be discussing as the programme goes on. Della, Let's have a look at what role, well, I'll ask you, what role does, data play in HR?
Yeah, I think the challenge at the moment probably is we've got too much data. So I think it was interesting when Graeme was talking about the fact, we'd quite like some days just 1 meg would be great. And I think we've got increasingly sophisticated around what data we can gather. So we have really good HR systems which give us stuff that we can use, and then we have applicant tracking systems for our recruitment. And actually sometimes you see HR teams that are almost overwhelmed with the data. So I think we have the data, and where businesses like us come in sometimes is, our client will come to us and say, we have this problem. And actually our consultancy arm goes in there and looks at it and says, actually, no, you haven't got that problem at all, because the data is just, we've got to go through it and analyse exactly where the issue is.
Yeah. Claire from Microsoft. Thank you very much for contacting us. F1's online viewing has grown hugely, and they're considering taking some race coverage to YouTube. As sport and business shifts hugely to online experiences, do you think there's a real chance physical events will drop off or die out entirely?
Well, I might answer some of that.
Yeah.
So what we've actually seen is early lockdown, everything went virtual. But obviously now as we're seeing social easing and people understanding social distancing, now we're going to a hybrid version. So although I do believe there's a big swing towards digital, I do sincerely believe that live events have will always have a place in our in anybody's kind of like marketing activity.
I agree. It's funny, isn't it? I kind of feel like we were always going to go this way, but we've just been kind of forced, I guess, to do it a little bit quicker.
Yeah.
But I do think this blended approach and actually looking at how we can do things better is definitely a positive way forward.
Well, we're doing our first major sporting event, which is in Blenheim Palace. Yeah. But we're using our Liber app, which is effectively an app that you download before the event. You self-diagnose on it, you put your kind of COVID results in, and then that gives you a kind of like a green pass to actually go to the event. And then we trace and track you at the event. Yeah. And then we can let you know whether anybody had COVID that was in your proximity. So there are digital tools that are making live experiences happen again.
Well, look, let's have a quick look. We'll go back to Graeme and Robert for that second part of that chat. Enjoy. We'll see you after this.
In Formula One, how do you ensure your data quality? And do you have any examples of where poor data has possibly impacted your performance or your team's performance?
So bad data can have really severe consequences for your performance. Could cost you a championship, has cost people race wins in the past. I think there's a huge amount of data behind the racing at the track, from the wind tunnel, the virtual wind tunnel, so computational fluid dynamics, the driver simulator, manufacturing, CAD design, race engineering, and that big feedback loop that we have, that constant feedback from free practice one at the track. This is what worked, what didn't work, feeding that back into aero, back into the wind tunnel. That data is so critical, because if you go in the wrong direction, you can cost yourself a whole season, not just a race or a few races into view. Yeah, the quality of data is something we spend so much time focused on, working with partners. How do we make sure that the data is good? And I especially think, as we're all talking about automation, AI may be coming in, so decision making being taken out of the hands of humans. You've then got to be absolutely sure your data is good.
Yeah. Is that where you are as well in terms of applying that kind of advanced analytics or AI to the team?
So 5 years ago, I predicted that by 2020, it would be possible to call a pit stop without a human making the decision.
Right.
I think what we've proven in the 5 years is it's possible, but none of us are doing it yet. I don't think the humans want to let us do it. The engineers aren't ready, so we're running those kind of technologies in parallel with human decision making, trying to get them better data, so into the data quality. But yeah, it's a reality in a lot of organizations now. AI is playing such a huge role.
Is it always about the win, or is there longevity in the data that you apply elsewhere to even maybe revolutionize how performance is achieved in the future?
All of the data that we put into our driver simulator, did that produce the right results? We will run things in our driver simulator and either decide to make it in manufacturing and put it on the car or not. So we need to be sure that that driver simulator is helping us to make the right decisions, because we don't want to. One of the worst things, especially for a team with our funding level, is to produce parts that you put on the car that don't give it an improvement in performance or reliability.
Does that translate to data ever being blamed for poor performance?
Humans can make the wrong decision if the data is bad, and I've given a couple of examples of that. You can interpret the data wrong, and that sometimes happens. And so we always do an after-action review on either the build of the new car or on our race weekend. There's constant analysis of what we've done. Was it the right thing to do? What learnings are there? What lessons can we learn and take to the next race or the next season? So we really focus on that. So I don't know that they blame data, because I mentioned earlier about no blame culture, and I think that has to apply to the tools you've got, to everything. You have to just learn from what went right, what went wrong, and do it better next time.
What are some of the most transferable takeaways you think from data analytics in your business?
Now, even big established organizations, they now care very much about who the disruptors are in their industry. And I used to say Formula One's different because most businesses wait until the end of the quarter to find out how they've done. That's not the case anymore. They can't afford to wait till the end of the quarter. One of the best presentations I went to a little while ago at a risk event was the CISO of a 150-year-old financial institution in the UK, which you would imagine is just steeped in history and not forward-looking at all. But actually, they're tracking every single startup who might pose any threat to them at all. And so it shows that view we have of big established organizations are very slow. I think the ones who are very slow aren't there anymore. So data, I think, has become a key currency, if not in every industry, in almost every industry.
Well, thanks very much, and good luck for Sunday. I really appreciate the time. Thank you.
I appreciate it. Thank you, Robert.
Yeah, that was fantastic. Graeme and Robert there, really, really an interesting insight into what's been going on with F1 at the moment. And also, we've had a lot of questions come through, so thank you so much. I'm going to squeeze this one in before the end of the show. It's Alice from Mars Inc. A challenging part of creating and implementing advanced analytics tools is deploying them within the business and managing the change from manual to automated analysis. Can you give any advice of how to manage the behaviour change and adoption of analytics?
So it was all about empowering more people to come onto the platform, have their own view of the data. So we're now running over 60 different marketing dashboards in Adobe across the globe. So it isn't a fixed set of dashboards that you just serve up to the CEO to try and make decisions. It goes back to what Graeme was saying. The number of engineers on the race weekend that need to view the data and then just feed up the relevant data is the really, really important bit to the relevant person to make the quick decision. It's really, really key. So it's a framework to empower the people to get their own view of the data and make their own decisions. That would be my advice.
Meredith, Graeme touched on how important the quality of data is to his team. Does that resonate with you?
No, absolutely. I mean, I think very core to what we offer is data quality, and that like fuel in a car, can only perform as well as what you're putting in it. And there's sort of this expression, garbage in, garbage out, but you have to get the accuracy at a reasonable state so you understand what you're analyzing. Big data got very exciting, billions and billions of records that could be brought together in sort of graph models and AI to understand. But fundamentally, you have to have accurate sources. And the more data there is, the more duplication there can be. Just look at your iPhone. How many versions of someone's phone number might you have? There's also a risk in overanalyzing or too much data. There's the expression we're kind of drowning in data, but starved of insight.
Thank you, Meredith. Adela, would you say the same applies to HR?
Yeah, I think the quality of the records, and really going back to my previous point, we go, someone says, we have a problem with attrition, so people are leaving. And it's only when we get to the second and the integrity of the data, maybe on so why are they leaving, that we then find an absence of quality. So I think it's definitely something that we need to get better at. Meredith had a great point, what you put in, you get out, and if it's not great, then at the end of it, when you really need that data to be telling you a story, then you really won't get what you need out of it. And as I said, you know, we very often go into clients who think they have a particular problem, and we have to send our consultancy team in because, it was so far away from the problem they thought. So, you know, absolutely echoing everything Meredith said, really.
And David, we've seen a great collaboration today in how CI Group have brought together Formula One, HR data and content. So what do you see as the next steps in business improvement and how data can help this?
Well, I think collaboration is key, and I think what you can do is you can create masses of data lakes, which you mentioned earlier, and then also we've talked about you need the right talent. So a lot of organisations create a lot of data, they're overwhelmed by it, and they don't have the right talent to actually analyse that data.
Della, thank you.
Thank you.
Have you enjoyed it?
Really enjoyable, thank you.
Yeah, and David?
Well, look, thank you very much. Thanks for everybody. Thanks for all the effort that's been put in. Thanks for all our listeners that have tuned in, over the last hour. Really appreciate you giving up your time. And all I'll say is, thanks again, and look out for the next Changing Behaviours. It'll be coming to a digital studio near you soon.